Greetings, intrepid viewers. Welcome or welcome back to this channel. And I'm Dr. Lena Rodriguez, your in-house sociologist. But let's celebrate. The hands-off protests were fabulous and everywhere, absolutely everywhere. Peaceful, awesome. And I read all your comments because there were people who protested who'd never protested before, people who haven't protested in 40 years. And some of the most moving ones were from people in tiny towns, particularly red towns. One viewer spoke of being in a Republican town of 6,000 people, and 1,000 people turned out to protest. So big and small, everything in between, fantastic. So let's hope it builds momentum because it's a buzz. Protesting itself is a buzz because on so many levels, it's affirming. You don't feel you're going crazy, you're not alone, and you feed off that momentum. And that's what is needed. And also, finally, we've got a slogan, hands off. Hands off is perfect. Yeah, hands off. Got to go for it. So that was thrilling. And even if you didn't get fabulous coverage, although I think you did eventually because it was too big to ignore, the world got big coverage. And there were also protests in all sorts of other countries. So just know that, right, in support. So go the people. Awesome, isn't it? Just thrilling. All right. So diving back into the mayhem and what's happening on an hourly basis. So let's have a look. What's on the list for today? Now, back to punishing the penguins. As someone who isn't a penguin, our retirement savings are being whittled away by this. So the Australian stock market has dropped, I think 5% or something. It's not good. But realignments are being made radically and quickly. And what I'm really pleased about too is it has caused the resurrection of the Commonwealth. Now, when I was a school child, and Canadians will tell you, I'm sure it was the same there, we had a portrait of the Queen in every classroom. And given that my father was an Irish Republican in that sense and so forth, we're like, oh. Anyway, nonetheless, dozens and dozens of countries are bonded by being in the Commonwealth. Now, that was all starting to drift away in the new era. You know, young Australians never had to sing God Save the Queen or anything like that. Didn't mean anything to them. And the only legacy really was the Commonwealth Games. And all that meant was we're getting closer to the Olympics. But now it's a completely reinvigorated thing. So UK, Canada, New Zealand, Australia and stuff, everyone's talking to everybody. It's really good. It's really good. So before we go any further, the attack on democracy in North Carolina, 65,000 votes that the powers that be don't want to count because, of course, they're in Democrat districts and also mail from overseas voters, usually overseas service members. Now, I think it's the North Carolina Supreme Court has put a stay on them throwing out the votes for now, but let's see where that case is going. North Carolina and the votes. So everybody, make sure you've got all your documents that you possibly can for any voting stuff. The North Carolina vote. Let's have a look. Come on down. It's a work in progress. Oh. All right, so this kicks off here in the middle. A card of compromise. Hmm. Are they going to count some and not others? Don't like it. I just don't like it. Okay, but there we go. Underneath that is the death card, which take heart, people. When I designed this deck, One World Tarot, I couldn't help a bit of mischief. We asked the artist to make this figure being trampled by the Grim Reaper to resemble a certain president. All right. So, now this is my card for fake families and the Republicans, who, of course, are doing this because they're Neanderthals. Who can forget the Flintstones, right? Outcome, not happy. So I think because it was talking about Republicans, I'm hoping the Republicans are not happy. This could go all the way to the Supreme Court, who are going to be very, very busy in the next however long. It's not over yet, is what I'll say. It's not over yet. But the next question, of course, do we have any faith in the Supreme Court over not so judicial Justice Roberts' court? Vile. Look, we can only, I'm going to do a Tim Walsh here, that Alito and Thomas are doing some calculations on the stock exchange and not happy. We can only hope. Let's look at the Supreme Court. They are, so a judge, I think it's Bosberg, had said that the DOJ team had to prove all these basic things to push their case forward about the Venezuelans by a certain deadline. The Supreme Court have overridden that. And according to the legal eagles, Midas Touch, Legal AF, etc., it's not as bad as it initially sounds. They have the authority to stay that, but they will have to hear it. But what they've also done, which is a win for the Yeti, I hate to say it, but the money frozen for new teachers for K-12 remains frozen. But again, it's hard to know because there's so much news coming at you at an hourly basis and a minutely basis. I just made up a word, minutely. You're deluged in confusing, confronting stuff, which is why it's important to have breaks. Anyway, I'm rambling. I want to do a bigger spread on the Supreme Court here. I'm going to do 3 cards with the regular deck and 3 cards with the other predictions deck. So here we go, Supreme Court. They are the key. They are the key. Good, bad, or ugly, they're the key. Oh, Lord. Okay, let's go. Be brave. That's interesting. Let's see these next ones. I'll hold them up so you can see them better when I talk about them. Okay, Supreme Court with this other deck. Let's have a look here. All right. Oh, sorry. Here. All right, so they don't get good cards for themselves. They're losing relevance and they're starting, um, well, let's hope they're starting to seriously worry about their own power going forward. These people do not have power. They're looking past the light. They're stumbling forward. They don't have leadership. They don't have leadership, judicial or through the executive branch. They've still got the titles, they've still got the robes. But look at this. I think there's some soul searching going on. Look, we can forget the two I just named earlier, of course. That leaves seven. Three of the seven are Liberals, so in the small L sense. So that leaves four, I think, will be having sleepless nights. Are we going to let the social experiment, which was the United States of America as a democratic place, go on our watch or not? I'd hope this don't work. Now, weirdly, with the extra cards, security cameras, I think they're worried about their security more and more. Well, all judicial figures are, but they're starting, this is what they're worried about here, their own security. Is there no end to people's preoccupation with self? No. Okay. Banking, currency. I think they're a trifle worried by the tariffs, which might mean the entire nation, it could go forth and upend what has been upended, right? Like they're not stupid people, well, except for Kavanaugh, who got pushed through despite being in a hungover, state. I think the tariffs are worrying them in terms of the implications. Well, they should be worried. Distraction and illusion. Is it theirs or ours about them? So my vibe on this card is they'll give a little win here to the Yeti, they'll give a win to the people, just distract. We're looking over here, this is bigger than that. Distraction and illusion. Not good enough, considering they're allegedly the last bastion. I mean, we shouldn't have expected any more, should we? Now, in further delights that have unfolded, I've seen the SNL clip where it was Mike Myers, I think, playing Musk, and he announced the brand new innovation for Tesla, and they're self-vandalizing cars. Isn't it fabulous? Self-vandalizing vehicles. Well, they just about are now. I know, you've got little old ladies keying cards. I mean, fascinating. Okay, so bear with me. Oh, there's a bipartisan bill. It's bipartisan by this much in Congress. Remember, Congress used to have the power of the purse. Things used to have to go through Congress. Those were the days, right? Before January 20th. Now, this is to review new tariffs. So they're trying to claw back a bit of dignity as much as power. I wouldn't call it power. Should have been power, could have been power. They could have stood up. The world would not be in this crisis. In fact, had Congress been more than a shiver looking for a spine to run up, you know, the valley of the hyenas, Congress. So the Yeti has threatened to veto the said bill. What's the point? What is the point of Congress unless things are due to change? Will this bill go up? Will this bill, the Congress has to be told about tariffs. It doesn't mean they're going to do anything about it. Have they got the cojones to say no to the Yeti? I mean, that perhaps is the bigger question. I like that last spread. Let's do that again. I'm talking about this bill, but I'm also talking about Congress because more and more people must be turning up to their Republican offices. So let's have a look at Congress. Sorry. Congress. Well, okay, let's have a look at this. Um, oops, what fell out? What fell out? Politicians and government. Oh, I love that. Politicians and government. Oh, bless. Okay, and two more of those. Rescue revived. All right, now. Congress have been in retreat, right? But with this card, the Six of Swords, going from choppy waters to smoother waters. However, this is not a happy trip, right? The people essentially have everything they own in the boat. The woman has the child, and all the swords are there, taking their baggage with them. This is a humble little boat. It's not a flash yacht. So I think they're still in the choppy waters. Yeah. Delusion. Like you've got the mad Marjorie Taylor Greene, you've got the passionate right wing, what we would call in Australia, absolute wankers. It is so confusing. It is absolutely confusing. But I draw your attention to the dogs. You've got the wild dog and the domestic dog, and they're both howling at the moon. So I think that represents the radical, hardcore MAGA delusions. And they're not even middle of the road. They're already right as well. They're both howling at the moon. In terms of this legislation, oh, look, there's a possibility it'll get up for them just to save face. But with these cards, I'm not that confident. So, but there's another little twist in the tail here. As I said, the card that fell out, politicians and government. That's what this question's about. Food shortage. Now, this is actually being talked about. I didn't think I'd see it, and I'm sure other viewers who aren't 22 or 34 would think they'd never see this in their lifetime again. However, because of the demolishing of US aid and the tariffs on everything, farmers are going to the wall. They are and I'm a farmer's daughter, and I feel for them, even though I would like to kick them in the shins too, because they persisted in voting for this cretin. But food shortages for a range of reasons. Homegrown food, going to be food shortages. Imported food, going to be food shortages are much more expensive. So I'll just return to that in a moment. And rescue revived. Right, so I think that's hinting at that's over the legal card here. So I think they're going to, it'll be very close, put it that way, because they're not there yet. They're all fantasizing and lying to themselves that it can't really be as bad as it looks and something miraculous will change. So I think this is the Republicans waiting for a rescue, and it might make them look as if they're doing something, which would be misleading in itself because they don't. Okay, now back to the food shortages. I think what else is happening? These tariffs are a huge learning curve to every one of us. So, whereas people had their degrees of interest in what's going on in their country, and let's be honest, it's not a large percentage of the population that delves into government trade deals. You know, it's probably 2 or 5% in most countries under normal circumstances. Now, on top of us all becoming lawyers in the last 4 years or 8 years, we're all becoming economists, right? So we're all much more across the delicacies of international trade. And one of the things that has come out is the Yeti has pushed back at Australia for not taking its beef and UK for not taking its chickens. Well, the UK won't take US chicken because it's chlorinated and that is banned by the EU and the UK, as it's banned in most countries, because the US is so badly regulated in terms of food production compared with the rest of the first world. Now, why we don't take their beef? Well, there's two reasons for that, Pet. One is we're beef producers, don't have a lot of call for it. We export beef. But apparently, and this was news to Australians, we do import some US beef, the crappy beef. So we produce high-end beef that's in demand throughout Asia and all over the world. And we take the crappy stuff. Why? For the hamburger chains. Now, the reason we don't accept US beef unless it's gone through a particular process is because you guys feed the cows pulped down meat from other deceased carcasses, ooh, which is what led to mad cow disease, which was a very big deal in the UK maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago or something. So I think Americans are starting to hear the glitches in your regulation about what you eat. And people need to know what they're eating. It's not good. It's really not good. Oh, God. And I remember when I was teaching, because I'm primarily a health sociologist, so I would teach first-year nurses and nutritionists about issues around diet. Things like why, uh, well, health by postcode, really. What people eat depends on your social class, right? And I won't bore you with 6 hours explanation of why that is. And in Australia, most young kids, like in the US, start work at McDonald's. And I would say to them, they'd be saying, oh, well, salads are healthy, aren't they? Depending what it was sprayed with, like my brother-in-law, my brother, my father, the men in my family used pesticides and things that have since been banned. The things that food is sprayed with, And then I'd say to the young things, who were all virtuously eating their lean cuisine and so on, said, look, how long was the lettuce in McDonald's from when the supply came in of the lettuce to when it was used? And then often that was weeks and months. It was just created to look like fresh lettuce when it was 6 weeks old. There's been this delusion about this. So I'm just going to do one more here. A little thing for you guys. A quick card for you. Oh, so I've only got time for one. Look at that. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. The best, the absolute best. Hope, inspiration. Oh, leave you with that vision. Now, don't forget, tomorrow, your Wednesday night, 7 p.m., Hogarth, Lady G, and Sheila will all be on in the new time slot, which is Wicked Wednesdays. Oh, the dogs have just come back. So I'll say goodbye now. Take care and see you next time. Ciao.